Is this a new low for Eddy Hearn? He just got mullered on his own show by Ben Shalom. Felix Cash got stopped by a fighter who previously only had one stoppage on his record in 23 fights. And to make matters worse, there was a fight that was supposed to happen on the undercard which got pulled due to suspicious betting activity. And Eddy Hearn admitted in an interview that he wasn't going to tell the media about it, but it was apparently leaked to the media. And thank God it was. Eddy Hearn claimed that he's never seen anything like this in the 15 years he's been involved in boxing. Do you guys believe that? I don't believe it. I don't believe it for a minute. Again, bear in mind, Eddy Hearn tried to keep this incident under wraps. He wanted it to come and go without the media and therefore the public having any knowledge of it. He tried to do the same thing with the Conor Ben situation. You guys remember that? He weren't going to say anything about it, but it was leaked to the press. Thank God. After the show, the words coming out of Eddy Hearn's mouth did not match the expression on his face. And in fact, the words coming out of Eddy Hearn's mouth haven't matched the expression on his face for quite some time. I want to say since Prince Khalid was removed from the equation in Saudi boxing. So let's talk about the fight. Felix Cash comes in after an 18-month layoff. In the build-up to the fight, he said he saw Tyler Denny as a tune-up. Now, when you're coming back from that type of layoff, and you apparently haven't been living the life outside the ring, you can't afford to see anyone as a tune-up. Leave that to the public. We can see a certain guy as a tune-up for you, but you can't see things that way, because that way lies damnation, as Felix Cash found out here. Tyler Denny was up for the fight, emotionally, psychologically, in a way that Felix Cash simply wasn't. He didn't look like a guy who expected to be in a tough contest, to me. That's not to say he would have won if his mental approach had been better, but for whatever it's worth, to me, he had the look of a man who thought he was just going to go through the motions. And by the way, that stoppage victory on Tyler Denny's record prior to Felix Cash was also on cuts. Cash thought he'd be in no great danger. He thought he'd be far too strong for this guy, hit too hard for him. Tyler Denny, who's a southpaw, despite not having any knockouts, actual knockouts on his record, he's very aggressive in the ring. Almost seems counterintuitive, right? Got kind of an offbeat rhythm, which Felix Cash really couldn't get to grips with. He was struggling to time Tyler Denny in there. Then he also tucks up nice and tight, makes it difficult for you to get through with clean headshots. And when you do get through on him, he seems to take a pretty good punch. You could see after 2 rounds, really, that Felix Cash was in trouble. The momentum of the fight was very much in Tyler Denny's favor. Now, Cash was actually having a good round. I think it was in the 4th, but towards the end of the round, he was caught by a big left hand, I think it was, from Tyler Denny, and actually shaken. And so imagine if you're Felix Cash, you're in there against a guy who, for all intents and purposes, has never knocked anyone out in 23 fights, and the guy's hurting you. It must have been surreal for him. And then we get to the main point of contention in the fight, the cut that Felix Cash suffered. Slow motion replays seemed to show the cut being caused by a punch. It wasn't smoking gun conclusive, but it was suggestive, because they didn't show enough of that sequence in slow-mo to see blood coming out. But you certainly saw a punch land on the injured eye in the round that it occurred. Before it had occurred, obviously. So anyway, in the 5th round, the referee sends Felix Cash to the corner so the doctor can take a look at the cut. On the doctor's advice, the referee decided to stop it. Tyler Denny thought he'd won by TKO, but he was then told, no, it's going to go to the scorecards because there have been 4 completed rounds, and the referee deemed that the cut was the result of a clash of heads rather than a punch. And you really wonder about that decision. Again, bear in mind, it's an Eddy Hearn show. Felix Cash is an Eddy Hearn fighter, been with him since his pro debut, going up against the Ben Shalom fighter. The cut appears to have been caused by a punch, but gets deemed a clash of heads, which then gives Felix Cash a lifeline. But Tyler Denny didn't seem to be worried, and it turns out he was right not to be because the judges all had him winning. Felix Cash was so embarrassed by this defeat that he left the ring before he could be interviewed. And he must be wondering how he went from stopping Denzel Bentley in 3 rounds to this. He must be wondering how on earth that happened. Now, there's a lot of speculation among boxing fans about Tony Sims's gym and whether there's something dodgy going on there. Some correlate the decline in Felix Cash's form to leaving Tony Sims's gym. The inference being he may have been on something before, but he no longer is now. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just conveying what a lot of boxing fans are speculating out there in the comment section of a lot of videos. Who knows? All I do know is it's a bad look for Eddy Hearn. He was hoping that Felix Cash would go places. The next generation of Eddy Hearn fighters is horrifyingly weak. From my perspective at least, I don't see a single world beater among them. I'm talking about his British stable now. Yeah, in America he's just signed Jerome Ennis. Okay, but in the UK where he made his chops, there's nobody. Frank Warren's got people. Ben Shalom's got people. Eddie Hearn's got nobody. Please don't talk to me about Johnny Fisher. If he can prove me wrong, he can prove me wrong. But to me, he looks like an Essex gimmick. I re-watched Johnny Fisher's most recent fight the other week when he fought that guy in America. And when I looked at the end sequence of that fight in slow motion, I was absolutely shocked by what I saw. Johnny Fisher threw about 20 unanswered punches against a completely stationary opponent. And I mean completely stationary. The guy wasn't moving his head, he wasn't moving his feet. He was a sitting duck against the ropes. Couldn't have made for an easier target. He was a big guy too. And Johnny Fisher unleashed 20 punches and only about 3 of them landed. Now that takes some doing. I'm telling you. Imagine throwing 20 shots at a heavy bag and only 3 land. Because that's virtually what was in front of him at that point. You know, Johnny Fisher does have some power there and some hand speed, some physical strength, but his accuracy is horrifyingly poor. At least when he's letting shots go in combination. Maybe for a single shot, it's a bit better, but when he starts opening up, oh dear. And what that means is he is an absolute godsend to a counterpuncher. If a counterpuncher can get this guy to open up, they'll have an absolute field day with him. Anyway, enough about Johnny Fisher. Let me know what you guys thought about Tyler Denny's victory over Felix Cash. And look, all respect to Tyler Denny. He's one of these blue-collar fighters who really wasn't supposed to go anywhere. Up until fairly recently, he was still working a day job. He managed to get a sponsor which allowed him to go full-time with the boxing, and that is in large measure responsible for his current run of form. Because unless you're blessed with abnormally high energy levels, and or an abnormally high talent level, then the likelihood is if you're working a day job and trying to be a professional boxer at the same time, you're going to fail. There have been a few exceptions to that, but for the most part, that's what it is. So Tyler Denny managed to get a sponsor, which allowed him to go full-time boxing. And perhaps because he's not the most naturally gifted fighter, he has given it absolutely everything and managed to become European champion. Although it has to be said, he won it in his last fight against an Italian guy who was 45 years old. Sometimes being a European champion can be a bit misleading because people tend to assume that that's a higher level than being British champion. And it sometimes is, but not always. There are some instances where the standard at British title level is actually higher than European title level. And no disrespect to Tyler Denny, but I suspect that was definitely the case regarding the European champion that he beat. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Are you sick and tired of the mainstream mindset? Does the dogmatic conformity and pathological ignorance have you tearing your hair out in frustration? Then don't be alone. Come and join our brotherhood on Patreon. We stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. You'll gain access to my weekly topical podcast where we take more deep dives than Jacques Cousteau on an endless variety of subjects. There's also videos, interviews, live Q&As, as well as a vast back catalogue of previous episodes, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen via the Patreon app or download in high-quality MP3. Connect with myself and hundreds of other members in our Element chat group. There's no contract, no commitment, you can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a Mickey D's McMuffin. Just head to my Patreon page via the link below this video and select the tier called the Brotherhood of Reason. I'll see you over there.